Welcome to Michelle's Story Time. I am Michelle and I am excited to read in honor of Back to School, which starts August and September. The Nervous Noodle. Social anxiety, fitting in and standing out. Written by Vi Lean. It was going to be the first day of school, and Nervous Noodle felt very anxious. He'd spent all weekend wondering how he could make friends. He practiced his introduction in front of the mirror, but just didn't feel confident enough. Noodle couldn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, he felt excited and scared at the same time. What if other kids wouldn't talk to him? What if he tripped and fell? What if his teacher asked a question and he didn't know the answer? What if he didn't make any friends today? Noodle was so nervous that he could hardly eat his breakfast. When he got to school, the kids were on the playground. They stood together as if they had known each other for a long time. Noodle moved rather awkwardly toward the circle of his classmates. Obnoxious Onion was showing off his tan from the tropical island he'd visited in the summer. Onion spoke so loudly that it was hard to hear anybody else talk. Noodle said, "Hello," but none of the other kids spoke to him. Oh no! He'd been afraid this would happen, and it did. In class, Noodle sat next to Persnickety Persimmon. She had all her school supplies set out perfectly, and Noodle was afraid he would knock them off the desk. As he scooted over, he fell out of his chair. Oh no! He'd been afraid this would happen, and it did. He was so embarrassed, and this made him even more nervous. Miss Betty Carotene was a caring carrot, so she helped Noodle up and introduced herself as the class teacher. Miss Carotene pointed to the clock and asked, "Does anybody know how much time has passed since the bell rang?" Bragging Broccoli was the first to raise his hand. "I know how to tell time and subtract," he said proudly. Noodle looked at Broccoli and thought, "Wow, Broccoli is super smart." Miss Carotene then asked, "Can each of you tell the class about one fun thing you did this summer?" Noodle was still thinking deeply about how smart Broccoli was. And when his teacher called on him to answer, he said, 15 minutes? Everyone looked at Noodle in confusion. Puzzled Pistachio stared at him. Oh no! He'd been afraid this would happen. And it did. Noodle was so nervous that he hadn't listened to Miss Carratine's question and answered wrong. The question was, can each of you tell the class about one fun thing you did this summer? And Noodle answered 15 minutes. It was time for recess, and Noodle's classmates were all spread out at different playstations. Noodle was too afraid to ask someone to play with him, so he stood stiffly by himself. For the whole recess, Noodle watched Serious Sesame, who was swinging far away. When Noodle thought of gathering the courage to go to the swings, the look on Sesame's face discouraged him. Oh no! He'd been afraid that this would happen, and it did. Noodle was too scared to try to make a new friend. At the end of the day, Noodle was so very tired from everything that happened. He went home, ate a big supper because he was hungry from not eating well, and went to sleep early because he was exhausted. The next morning, Noodle woke up feeling different. He was not as nervous as yesterday. He didn't have the same what-if questions because every bad thing he really feared had already happened. And he survived. Oh, but wait, he thought. What if today has new disasters in store? Noodle had the answer this time. He knew he would be strong enough to handle it. When Noodle got to school, he walked toward the circle of his classmates. Obnoxious Onion was speaking very loudly again. Noodle quietly said, "I like your tan, Onion." He didn't expect anyone to hear him, so he was surprised when Onion answered, "Why, thank you, Noodle." In class, Persnickety Persimmon was frustrated because one of her pencils rolled away and she could not reach it. Noodle was limber, so he bent his body and stretched to get the pencil from way under the cabinet. Persimmon was delighted. She gave Noodle a cool pencil and placed it on his desk, where she thought would be perfect. Noodle thought that Miss Carrotine looked different today. She smiled and asked, "Has anyone noticed something different in the classroom today?" Bragging Broccoli raised his hand first again and answered, Last year, I was the first to notice the class pet was missing. Noodle looked at Miss Carotine again and knew the answer right away. When Miss Carotine smiled at him, he answered, "You are wearing glasses today, Miss Carotine." She cheerfully laughed. Well done, Noodle. Yes, I'm wearing glasses. Even a carrot is not perfect, and I sometimes need a little help. When recess came, Miss Carotine asked everyone to join a soccer game. Noodle's class played against the upper grade Mean Beans. Noodle's team knew they had to give their best effort to set the tone for the new school year. Noodle wanted to help his team so much that he didn't have time to be nervous, even though the beans looked fierce. When lead bean kicked the ball, it sped past Onion, who was busy talking, past Persimmon, who was finding the perfect place to stand, past Pistachio, who was puzzled, past Broccoli, who was bragging about how good he was at sports, and past Sesame, who was seriously looking somewhere else. What is going on? Noodle sprinted and kicked the soccer ball to score a goal. His team cheered. The classmates jumped with joy, and even the upper grade Mean Beans were impressed. Sesame had a huge, silly smile as he enjoyed the victory. At the end of the day, Onion was talking loudly about his friend Noodle's goal. Broccoli was bragging about having Noodle in his class. And Persimmon complimented Noodle for being perfect in his game. Noodle went home and hugged his mother. He ate a big supper and went to sleep early for a different reason. It had been the best second day of school ever, and he was exhausted in the best way ever. The end. And that was the end of The Nervous Noodle, social anxiety fitting in and standing out. Thank you for listening. And happy school year to all of the students and teachers who are back to school and who are getting ready to start school. Thank you again for listening. Bye bye. Bye bye.